All right, so thank you all for joining. We're going to have a very insightful conversation today. February 19th, for those who don't know, in 1942, on this day, President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066, which issued the forced removal of Japanese Americans into prison camps across the United States. And these prison camps are also more commonly referred to as internment camps. So we are going to be talking with Brent Yoshida first about his family connection to this film, because he had some families that were incarcerated in the camps. And then we'll segue the conversation to Dion, given that it is Black History Month, and we'll be talking about his character as well in the film. So kicking off this conversation, Brent, you had some family members in the camps, particularly Manzanar and Roar, and also Crystal City. And there's an interesting side note that I'll share in a moment about Crystal City Camp, but can you just start us off talking about at what point in your life did you learn about your family's history and them being in the camps?
Well, first off, I just want to say thank you so much for hosting this and putting this all together. And thank you everyone for joining. I know it's a weekend, so we all really appreciate that. So my family definitely overestimated my ability to comprehend the situation. I was probably like 5 years old when they told me about it. And, you know, to me, I'm just trying to learn my ABCs and I don't know, this idea of the internment camps was so like big. And it wouldn't be till later that I would fully, I mean, I'm still comprehending it, right, as we're growing as adults. But at that time, it's very simple. It was like, Grandma and Grandpa used to live here as teens. They took their belongings. They only got one suitcase. Their parents lost their homes, businesses, the end. And, you know, one of the main pillars of the Japanese culture is respect. And so it was kind of like a gentle yet sober delivery. I was so small, but you can tell as a kid, like, okay, this is a serious matter and I need to treat it that way.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So you went as a kid. Did you visit all of the camps or just?
Yeah, so I've only had the opportunity to go to Manzanar, but I've gone probably over a dozen times. And I grew up in Southern California with my family. And every year we would take 2 trips up to Mammoth, which is like a 6-hour drive. Like my grandparents would go, cousins, aunties, uncles, all shoved in all these cars. And my sister's like in the back singing karaoke and I'm like car sick, just trying to get through it. But we'd stop off at Manzanar and at that time there wasn't the rebuilt barracks, there wasn't the tower, there wasn't the museum and all these things that the community has gathered together to kind of retell these stories. At the time, I felt like everything was kind of being swept under the rug. And so there was literally one guard tower at the entry. And there's like a roundabout where you drive. My grandpa's name is still in the stone there. So we would like all go sit there and just just sit in silence almost. And then a lot of barbed wire. So that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Do you remember like as a kid, like what you thought or like what your experience was like being there for the first time? You were kind of
one of the stories that I always remember is like, it was literally just dirt. So my cousins and I were just like playing tag, and my grandparents, my aunties and uncles, they're just like sitting by my grandpa's name on the rock, just like in silence. But we're climbing through the barbed wire. My cousin ripped his pants like way too high. And everyone was just like, okay, that's enough. Get in the car. And then we're back on the road to Mammoth.
Yeah, it's interesting that you have this personal connection. So everyone, Brent is going to be playing Kazu Sakamoto in Desolate Dreams. And in the film, without spoiling it, Kazu and his family essentially go to Heart Mountain Camp, which was one of the 10 camps. That camp is in Wyoming. So your grandparents were in the camps, right, Brent? I know you said your family members in general, but did your grandparents ever talk about life in the camps at all? I know in the research phase of this film, I talked with a lot of incarcerees who are still living today. And it's interesting because they all have different experiences. Did your grandparents share at all about what their experience was like in the camps?
Talk too much. It was mostly like I think there's a lot of embarrassment, right? In Japanese culture, it's a lot about respect and culture. I mean, just cultures in general, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of embarrassment. There's a lot of shame through the experience. But a few of
Mm-hmm.
the things that they told me were like the JAs, the Issei, which is the first generation of Japanese, they lost their homes, their businesses,
Mm-hmm.
everything they had worked for as immigrants. So that would be my grandparents' parents. And then my grandparents' generation, which is the second
Right.
generation or Nisei, many of them were like teens and
Mm-hmm.
kids. So it was very difficult for them to see their parents suffering. However, they tried to make the most out of it by, you know, creating a really nice community with like, they had sports leagues and they had like dances and they had judo competitions. And so that was something that I feel like um, the second generation did a really good job. And obviously there was help with the first generation as well. But to me, they were so young. So
Mm-hmm.
it was more, they were able to, I don't know, just make more out of it as far as like a positive experience because they were so young. They didn't lose as much as the Issei generation. So I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
One of the examples
Yeah.
of how little my grandpa actually told me is I recently went to Manzanar with National
Mm-hmm.
Geographic and we looked up my grandpa's name and I wasn't expecting much. So I told the lady my grandpa's name and I was just like sitting there just waiting for them to, I don't know, just be like, oh, there's nothing. And she came back with all these newspaper articles of his name in the paper for
Mm-hmm.
basketball. I'm like, I didn't even know you played
Oh,
basketball. Like that's how little they
that's
passed
where you
this
get it
these stories on to us. He was,
from.
I don't know, he was just very humble and yeah.
Oh, yeah. Wow. That's something. Yeah, there were, for those watching, there were 10 camps in total during this time of the Japanese American incarceration. And it's interesting because, as mentioned earlier, some of Brent's family members were in Crystal City Camp, which was also a camp. And I've noticed it's not typically listed under the 10 camps. But for those who are unaware, Crystal City Camp was in Crystal City, Texas. And this was a place of confinement for people not only of Japanese American ancestry, but also those who were German and Italian during World War II. So just an interesting side note there. And segueing the conversation now into Black History Month. It's February, it's Black History Month. So Dion Tillman, he is the lead in Desolate Dreams, and he will be playing the role of Robert Parker. So Robert Parker is a journalist in the film, and this character was greatly inspired by an African-American journalist named John Kinloch, who reported with the California Eagle. And the California Eagle was this newspaper that was known for fighting racial segregation and discrimination in the LA area. So Dion, it is Black History Month, and I guess let's start off with what Black History Month means to you. And then also how do you think journalism has played a role in combating racial discrimination against African Americans in
Well,
this country?
first off, I want to say thanks again just for the opportunity to play the role. And I'm happy to be here in this conversation right now. But Black History Month, it's as a Black man, it's everything. I mean, it's one thing that we have a month, 28 days, 29 on a leap year, but typically it's every day, honestly. Using this, it's a matter of really just being able to do the deep dives and understand, how we got here as people and how far we've come and how far we're still going. Because every day, again, it's history is being made every day, every second. And even with that, the journalism aspect of it. So I'm a photographer, videographer outside of this, and it's so important because it keeps record. I mean, even Brent, as you were telling, your family has stories. The things that historically speaking, everything was passed down through, conversation, tales told, but to have actual visual evidence of what happened is kind of like, you can't beat that. So, I mean, so for the fact that it's proof, it's evidence of things that have happened. So when we're fighting these these situations that we're still fighting today, the racial injustices and issues that go on amongst cultures, we're able to actually document it. I mean, if you think about how much has been going on in the past couple of years, police brutality wise, all the photos and everything has been able to showcase what exactly has been going on. And the best part about it is it's able to convey it. So even though you may not know exactly what's going on, you can look at an image or, you know, a set of images or even a video and actually be able to feel what happened within the moment that was captured.
Yeah, and that kind of segues into the next question too, because you're a photographer. And during the early 1940s, when the Japanese American incarceration was taking place, photography was black and white on film. And now we're in this digital age, and of course, photographers still use film, but it's a little different, obviously, than the early 1940s. What impact do you think that type of photojournalism during the early 1940s has on viewers today? I know for me, like when especially in the research phase, all the photos that I've seen in black and white of, you know, the Japanese Americans boarding the buses or just like waiting for the buses, the campsites, those kind of photos, like what impact do you think that has on viewers today?
It allows people to be able to take a step back in time and see what was going on. We can, you know, read in history books and things like that, but even as you said, doing the research, when you find the actual archive of these photos and these images, there's so much, you know, that we don't know about. There's so much that we don't get told about. So being able to see it, it really paints the picture of what was going on back then. And even with the stories, I mean, kind of what, you know, the essence of this film is about, it shows you things that people didn't think happened. So being able to reflect on it and be able to actually see it, I mean, that, again, is history. History is one thing that, you know, it doesn't end, and it's always evolving. It's always, things are always being created and added to it, but it's just a way to be able to look back through the timeline and go, this is how it used to be, this is how far we've come, and show, you know, just the growth.
Yeah, absolutely. There's always something new, I feel like, that I see in photos. Like there's different emotions every time I look at them. And both you and Dion and Brent, you both are portraying this allyship on screen between Black and Asian friendship. Why do you think this is, and Brent, feel free to answer this as well. Why do you think this is important, this dynamic? Why do you think this is important to show on screen?
Brent, you want to go first? First of me.
You got this, buddy. I trust you.
It's important because, I mean, those separate cultures between Japanese and you know, African American, we go through a lot of the similar issues, combating the structure of America, we'll say that, or just the world as a whole. It's important. I mean, just the allyship, there's power in unity. I mean, simply put, I mean, I know there are differences that go on, but it's like to be able to showcase and actually reveal the fact that, you know, it's not so divided as people think it is. You know, it's just one perspective of it. And yeah, Brett, I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'll just go ahead. Thanks.
Yeah, no. Go.
Yeah, I'll just piggyback off that. I totally agree with you. And, you know, I think just even as a human race, not even just minorities, but just as a human race, we deal with adversities, and we're not that much different from one another in our problems, in our struggles, in our cares for our families, and what we love and what we want out of this life. And so, yeah, I think if anything, just a unity of humanity, right? I think that's been, I don't know, something that I've been trying to learn and, I don't know, just grow as a human being.
Yeah, and I wanted to put a personal touch of myself in this film as well, which is why I, you know, looked more into the Black and Japanese, Black and Asian allyship. For those watching, that's another side note there. So Brent, your great uncle, is Initio, and he was very pivotal in the redress And before I ask you to talk more about your personal relationship with him and the Japanese American community, for those watching, I'm going to take a moment just to read this brief background on who Alan Initio is. And this information that I'm reading is pulled from the Manzanar Committee's website. So Alan Initio is known for his leadership during the redress movement in the 1980s, along with his decades-long activism in the Japanese American community. The Manzanar Committee stated, when one thinks of the most effective activists within the Japanese American community, of its best leaders and top mentors, Alan Initio has to be among the names atop the list. The highlight of Nishio's story is his leadership role in the Little Tokyo People's Rights Organization and the National Coalition for Redress Reparations, now known as Nikkei for Civil Rights and Redress. He was instrumental in helping to keep the National Coalition for Redress Reparations on track through his organizing skills, providing his own perspective on matters, and ensuring that all voices were heard in the decision-making. Nishio also served for many years as the board president of the Little Tokyo Service Center, and he continues to serve as the chair of the Board of Governors. Throughout the years, Nishio has also served as a mentor to young activists who want to make a difference in their communities. So Brent, given that introduction that I just gave on your great uncle, Alan Nishio, can you talk about your personal relationship with him in the community?
So Alan, as you mentioned, he's just a true giver. He's a generational leader and just like a hero, not only in the community, but also in our family. And Alan has taught me so many things about life, but one of the most important lessons was taking care of family and his inner circle. So throughout his life, he's had two very special people keeping him on track. And like, if you watch interviews or just talk to him, he's definitely always like kind of like pushing the gratitude towards these two people. And they would be Yvonne, which is his wife, and they've been married for 55 years. She is just an angel. I love her and I love him so much. And them together is just like a power couple. And then his mom, who is literally one of my favorite human beings on this planet. She lived to be 103. She just passed away recently, but I used to see her thank you.
Sorry.
I used to see her almost every weekend while I was going to USC. And she was like this little, she was probably like barely 5 feet, but she's so strong and mighty. Wow. And she would just like light up a room with her smile and just give me the strongest hug. I'm like, where do these little muscles come from? You know? Yeah, I know. But yeah, it's maybe you can relate. Just one of those people just gives you one of those hugs. You just know you're loved. And those hugs really kept me out of a lot of trouble while I was at SC, because I knew I had to see her on Sunday mornings. And so I would like not go out, and so I could get a good night's rest and see her. And I don't know, my exchanges with Alan have been like, it's just one of those things you just cherish so much. And one of my favorite days is me and him spent the afternoon together. I took him out to lunch, and we ate for 2 hours. He was telling me all these stories. He has such a brilliant, like inspiring mind. And so you just like can't help but like gobble it all up. But after that, we're walking through Little Tokyo in LA, and all these people are like sweeping the streets and stuff. And there's only been like a very few times when I've been with people who a whole community has so much respect for when you're walking with them. Like people greet them with a different demeanor and gratitude. And I don't know, to me, those two people have been like Coach Pete Carroll at SC and Alan Initio. That's how high up in my book he is.
Yeah. Wow. Thanks so much for sharing that. And for those popping on, we were just talking about Brent's great uncle, Alan Initio, who is very pivotal in the redress. And you can find out more information about Alan on the Manzanar Committee's website, which again is manzanarcommittee.org. So thank you, Brent, for sharing that. And last question for the both of you. What are you looking forward to the most about working on Desolate Dreams and also portraying your roles, Dion, Robert Parker, and Brent?
Go ahead, Dion.
Kazu Sakamoto.
Oh, I'm gonna let you go first.
No, you got this.
Ultimately, I'm looking forward to telling the story. Definitely being presented with the script and reading it. I mean, it's just something about it that just it is gravitating. So I'm looking forward to being able
Mhm.
to convey the message, and showcase. I'm gonna just say the story. I don't want to give away too much.
Yeah.
I don't want to say too much. But I'm
Mhm.
also just looking forward to working
Right,
with. But I'm
right,
looking
right.
forward to working with the
Don't
team as well,
spoil
though.
anything.
I mean, everybody's great.
Yes. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, I just piggyback off you again. Definitely looking forward to working with both of you, the team as well. And I'm
Mhm.
excited for this film to raise awareness of a piece of history that, like, in our busy lives, I feel like can often be overlooked. And it's also just a tribute to
Mhm.
those who have really pushed that envelope before us and allowed for us to have the freedoms we have today.
Hmm.
Mhm. Yeah. Thank you both for saying that.
Yeah,
I hope you are looking forward to
absolutely.
working on it. I'm just kidding. No, I'm looking forward to continue collaborating with the both of you, especially during this pre-production time, and yeah, and for people
Yeah.
to see the film eventually. And yeah, with that, I just thank you both so much for taking the time to have this conversation. For those who are watching later, or if you're on the live right now, you can learn more about the film at desolatedreamsfilm.com. Yeah,
Go
with
click on
that,
the
thank you
link.
everyone.
Do the
And
research. See what we're
yeah,
trying to do.
click on the link and read up. Yeah. Yes, see what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Read up on Day of Remembrance, which is today. And so we thank you all
Thank you
for
so
joining.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.